Hey everybody. Yep, we're here. We're back. We're live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to some. We've already got quite the spectrum of time zones already. So, welcome everybody. This is Integrator Insider. We're going to be covering some case studies leading up to InfoComm. We've got a lot of really fun stuff to talk about, and I'm about to bring on today's first guest, but I want to make sure I give a shout out. Not only hi, introducing myself. Yes, hi. Oh, hello, Cookie. Yep. Hey, Andre. I'm Samantha. I help manage all the installation and commercial audio for Alan and Heath. And behind the scenes, he's hidden right now, is Mr. Alex Skinner. He's going to be helping do all the camera shifts and anything fancy you see other than me waving my hands around a lot is Mr. Skinner. So big shout out to him. You also met him on the last live stream we did. So, okay, without further ado, we're already a couple of minutes in. Let's bring on today's guest, Mr. Alex Peake from JCA Media. Hey, how is it going this morning?
It's going good. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I guess it's still technically morning for you. You're on East Coast time, and thank you again I know you've been actually dealing with some little fires of your own on some projects right this morning, right?
Yes, yeah, scheduling stuff, but we made it through, and I was literally soldering cables up until 15 minutes ago. So
Who doesn't love soldering on the run?
that's
So,
right.
yeah, it's Alex is a good friend of mine. If it's okay for me to say that at this point, we've
Absolutely.
been working on projects together or just making phone calls and text messages for like years at this point, probably almost 4 years now.
Yep.
And yeah, oh yeah, we got a comment. I'm outnumbered by Alex's. That's correct. It's a very popular name for those of us over 25. So yeah, let's dive in. So you're at a project right now, but one that's come out in the last year when we visited together when we're talking about AHM integration and projects, and really just Alan and Heath in general, one that I like bringing up a lot is that Maker's Mark project that you finished up last year. Could you tell us a little, just to give us a little intro, Maker's Mark? Maybe they've heard of it. What's going on with that?
Yeah. So Maker's Mark is obviously a distillery. It's about 15 minutes from us. And the project first landing in our lap was actually not the showpiece, I guess, of what we've done for them. It was actually their break room. They were redoing the break room. They wanted simple audio control, and we actually used an AHM for that. And that was the first foot in the door. So we used AHM and used RTI control with that. And that was really just, basic mic video, choose my input. We did use a priority channel on that mic. So if they were doing a discussion with the video, it would override that. So that was the first one. And then as we were working
Mm-hmm.
on that, they took us to what they call their home place, which is basically their welcome center,
Oh,
where tourists and
yeah.
stuff
I
start.
actually have some. I'm going to play this. I have some B-roll of the
Okay.
of that
All
while
right.
you're talking, because that's always way more fun, right? So I'll just
Yep.
hit play on that, and
Okay.
we'll just be in the corner talking. All right, go ahead.
All right.
I can
So
scrub
yeah,
as
so you can
necessary.
see, and if I see something, I'll point it out while we're talking about. But yeah, so this is their welcome center. This was a very interesting space because there are technically 11 different zones around this house. There's a gallery in the front, which is kind of like an art gallery. There's the
We're
check-in
standing over
area.
there.
Yeah, there's bathrooms. There is the garden right there. Very much we want audio everywhere. We want it to have control in each zone. We want it to be volume matched from zone to zone, so it's just a smooth transition.
Yeah, and
So it was,
this is just to be clear, this is their distillery in Kentucky. Like this is where if you go by Maker's Mark at the store right now, you're looking at the place where it's made.
yep, yes, literally. Right behind that pavilion is the actual distillery buildings. So yeah, this was very much, we need audio everywhere. We need it to be pristine. We want beautiful control over it. The usual list of requests that you get.
Hmm.
So what we wound up doing is we used an AHM 64. We did 11 different zones, all with Danley Sound Labs PA. And we split up the house. Like I said, there was 11 zones, but they wanted different music in different areas. Kind of it started as chill. When you walked in, they have a cocktail bar in the back. It was a little more lively. And then they had the garden where they really wanted just serene, quiet, stuff in the garden.
Hmm.
So, we did all that with the AHM. We did utilize ANC, ambient noise, correct me if I'm wrong, Samantha,
Compensation.
ambient compensation, yes. in two of those rooms, because two of those rooms are very lively, the cocktail bar and the gallery. So we put a mic in there,
Yeah,
and it
that's
would
where you had
listen.
that big old glass wall, right?
Yes.
This right here. This is like a
Yes.
huge
So yeah,
room.
and I don't know if you can tell, but on the right hand side there, those are acoustic panels that are matched to the exact color of the paint
Ooh.
on the left side of the room, and they're the exact side of the plaster. So we did that. So those are acoustic panels, but they're literally exact color and exact same size as the wall to try and help as much as possible. But buried up in the top left of that room is a tiny little boundary mic that's listening and making adjustments as the crowd gets, more intense, louder. It'll
Mm.
slowly
Yeah, like up in
raise
here.
that volume, and we did the same thing in the gallery in the front room. So really, really utilized, pulled out all the stops, we used all 12 local IO on the AHM. And then I think we added 3 or 4 more with some growth and expandability um, for all that. So yeah, there's
Hmm.
all kinds of beautiful speakers everywhere, but glorious
Yeah,
control with the
everything's.
AHM. So, and we
Yeah, I
did
think
use
I've got a shot
RTI
of something.
for
Oh,
custom
here's the
control of
gallery.
that. So there's the gallery. There's the really, I mean, you can tell tile floor, drywall walls, glass ceiling. So,
Hmm.
so yeah, really cool space. Some very hard acoustical spaces, which is a whole other discussion with PA choice. But as far as control and Allen and Heath goes, we used RTI for control, and they have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 touch screens in different areas. There you go. So
Mm.
there's
That's my
controls for your
hand.
audio and stuff like that. Yeah. So yeah, and it worked beautifully. Every morning RTI kicks on the system and tells the AHM to go back to its default state in case adjustments were made the day before. So, if they
Mm.
had something outside in the pavilion and they had hit the do not disturb button or any of the functions that we added in there, basically it would say wipe, reset, start over, and here's your daily function again. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So this is just to be clear, like it started out as one little project, but it's since grown since then as well. So there's an AHM in the welcome area,
Yep.
and
Yep.
yeah, and
There's a,
then but there's
there's
also there's like a restaurant, there's the gift shop area, there's also like the lab area. Can you talk about some
yes.
of that?
Yes, so there's an AHM 64 in the Welcome Center, the home place. There's an AHM 32 in the break room, which now actually doesn't just do the break room. It actually controls audio for 3 different bottling lines. So it
Mm,
is doing multiple zones and doing multiple audio streams for that. And then we have another AHM 32 in their innovation lab, which has like a tasting room, the lab itself, and some of the offices. They all have individual audio.
mm,
And then down the road is going to be possibly a restaurant. We're going to add that into the mix, the gift shop. A lot of these are looking at remodeling those, and that will
mm.
happen with those. And the eventual plan is to Dante all of them together and use the
Yeah,
priority channel as actually more of an emergency thing, because we had a tornado or something, an issue about 2 months back,
yeah.
and they were yelling in one of the spaces trying to get control of everybody. So they're like, it'd be great if just from the security desk we could make an announcement and everything
Mm,
takes over. And I'm like, Dante, AHM, priority channel, solved.
mm.
So
We can do it.
that's the eventual plan, is to have AHMs in every facility doing that.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, this ended up being such a cool project, and it seems it's a beautiful campus as we saw, but the needs that they had, I think, go across all different kinds of verticals, and you've seen it in all different kinds of projects because JC Media does all kinds of projects. Could you talk more about, just because you've done House of Worship, you've done the Maker's Mark Distillery, and there's a lot in the middle here. So, what kind of other stuff are you guys working on?
Oh, so House of Worship is our main that's our main avenue. 99% of our stuff is mostly House of Worship, but we do stuff for universities. There's a local university here, Camels University. We do a lot of work for them. Obviously we do mostly everything for makers. We do a lot of work for Jim Beam now, so there's a distillery side. We have
Mm.
an AHM running in a couple of elementary schools doing
Ooh,
gym duty. We're actually getting ready to put 2 more in this summer that are doing gym and cafeteria, kind of the same unit running both zones. And actually, we're going to try out the room combining feature on that one.
yay!
Yeah, perfect use case for that. And then because the rooms actually connect together, so whenever they open that up, that's combined at that point.
Mm.
And then bowling alleys. We got actually have a bowling alley running an AHM 32. So it's one zone is over the floor, and we're getting ready to do phase 2 is zones in. They have like a big bouncy area, an arcade, in the restaurant, and they're utilizing like a Blue Stream music streamer for their different zones, and
Hmm.
all controlled over RTI. And then we're using both priority channels. There's a priority channel at the main desk where they call for lanes. Then there's another priority channel being used in the restaurant where they can call for orders. That goes over the PA as well.
Hmm.
So bowling alleys. I actually might have an AHM running in a funeral home, actually, believe it or not. So,
Funeral homes have been an oddly very
yep,
like niche little AHM area where
yep,
people are like, oh no, this is perfect. This is exactly
yep,
what we need because they just need some reinforcement and really
yep.
simple control and perfect. Here you go, a nice affordable way
Yes.
to do it. Yeah.
And a lot of times
That's
it's in
funny.
multiple zones. And a lot of times it's like, I want
Yeah.
to hear it in the office. I want to hear it there. I want to hear it here.
Yeah, or
Yeah, a
multiple
lot of that.
parlors or yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So bowling alleys is like one of those things. I love hearing about projects because they're so like there's all kinds of places that we don't even like think about day to day, but as soon as you say it, it's like oh right, like the funeral homes and the
Yep.
bowling alleys. The bowling alleys are a great sort of study on priority inputs, but also zoning because they usually have food and restaurants and stuff like that inside of them, at least
Yep.
here in the States. So again, wouldn't necessarily think about it, but yeah, now that you say it, for sure.
Yep.
So let's go back to houses of worship for a moment because you've done
Okay.
not only Allen Heath consoles in houses of worship, but you've also done AHM stuff. So, what are the houses of worship projects are you typically asking for?
Uh, for when it comes to Allen and Heath, I have two different use cases really. The first one that I had
Hmm.
was a whole kids wing. And the whole kids wing wanted
That's right.
basically just like an IP1 in every classroom, a couple of ceiling speakers, and I want to be able to pull up the sanctuary feed, or I want to be able to pull up what's on the TV in front of me, or a local input in the room. I mean, three inputs, but we're talking
Hmm.
14 classrooms. So
Yeah.
that was the first use case we had. They could pull up the sanctuary, they could pull up their input, pull up TV. We did do a fourth input. We put like a Christian music streamer in their rack that was just always playing, where if you want to pull that up, you could. The other
Hmm.
use case is the rest of the building. I had another church that said, yes, classrooms, that's great, but like we wanted audio pumped into the bathrooms, the lobby. We want audio to take care of our fellowship hall because that's just a couple inputs. We want audio to take care of our gym. So we used an AHM 64 to run their classrooms, which was phase one. And then phase two is add it in the gym, add it in the fellowship hall,
Hmm.
add it in the lobby. And so we've got classroom side and we've got building elsewhere. And that
Yeah.
AHM64 is running all of that. And in that instance is Dante to their Avantis,
Mm.
and is getting ready to be Dante to their SQ5 in their youth room. So all
Oh,
kinds
nice.
of ecosystem meshed
Yeah.
together there. ME500s in the youth room, ME1s on the stage in the sanctuary. So yeah, hitting a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Seriously, I was going to say houses of worship, at least stateside, are somehow are giving me deja vu about bowling alleys, and that it's seemingly multiple different kinds of verticals in one. Like it's all under this singular sort of entity, right? Like the church,
Mm-hmm.
it's often goes beyond just one physical building, but even if it is just one actual building, there are all these different zones or areas that we sometimes see in like office spaces or education or corporate centers or cafes and restaurants. Like they're all housed underneath this house of worship umbrella. How do you balance the needs for, the cafe and area or the children's classrooms need versus like the sanctuary because they've got to be needing different control or different stuff happening, right? How do you balance that?
Do you mean in terms of like what is the choice between console and AHM? Is that what you mean? Like where is that line between what you're picking or?
Certainly, yeah, like yes, that could absolutely be part of it, but then also like how do you make the decision on their what they're saying? So they say they need like we need some children's worship area assistance. We know we need this, and this is where we think we want to head. We think we want to be able to have some worship in here, but we need to make it really simple. So how do you choose between a console or looping it into the main system processor? Where
Yeah.
is that dividing line?
So, we kind of draw that line at, do I need to be mixing multiple inputs on the fly? Like, is
Mhm.
there a band or is there,
And when you say
maybe
mixing, what do you mean by
I mean,
mixing?
literally
Like
like
adjusting the compressor and
yes, getting to those kind of functions. Do I want faders? That's kind of the first question I ask them is, do you want physical
yeah.
faders in this space? And that always doesn't always make the decision because we can always put an
Hmm.
IP8 in there. So,
Yeah, yeah, I
but
was
do
gonna say I think there
but
is an
do
IP8 in that children's wing,
yes.
right? So
Yes, but do you want to be able to EQ and compress and gate on the fly? And if that answer is yes, then most of the times we lean towards more, okay, there needs to be a console in this
mhm.
space. But if
Yeah,
it's
and if they
like,
say what's a gate,
yeah, and then
yeah,
we'll get to that in a minute. But then the other discussion is, well, in our fellowship hall, we just want to be able to pull up the sanctuary, the video feed from right there, and two wireless mics. I'm like, well,
hmm
that's easily an AHM job. Once that's set and
hmm
it's set, and you just need volume adjustment. So, in the use
hmm
case of the church that I mentioned, did the classrooms and the building, the discussion was if it was just wireless mics and music in that zone, it's an AHM
hmm
duty job. So the
yeah,
gym,
yeah,
AHM all day long. The fellowship hall was that. The
yeah. And when you
bathrooms
say
and
gym, you're talking about like gym
they
can
actually have
mean
like
lots of like a fitness center, but like almost an auditorium style thing where people play like basketball as much as
yes,
take out folding chairs.
yes, sorry, yes, like literally like
Yeah,
basketball gym.
right.
Sorry, yes. So, yeah, very much like that's AHM in the lobby and the bathrooms. That's just feeding from, the sanctuary. It's really just kind of a matrix feed that's pumped into the AHM and to just have volume adjustment. That's all they want. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously that's very much AHM, but I have some spaces that you need to figure out that line between what is just simple mixing and just a couple mics, or is it, hey, there's a band in here and I need to do
Mm-hmm.
that. So that's usually where we find that line. So
Yeah, yeah. So you're using Dante a lot. Is it fair to say that you're using Dante on most projects these days?
I would actually say on about 25% of our projects,
Mm,
because if we are doing point to point, so let's say if we're doing an AHM in one area and it's like an AHM 64 and we've got an Avantis here and I just need to get audio to that, a lot of times we'll do S-Link between the two. So we'll just do the
mm-hmm.
Allen Heath point to point, communication there. Because one of the things we really try to keep in mind is Dante controller and network savvy, being able to fix
Yeah.
that on the fly. And I'm not saying this is the case for everybody, but most church clientele we see doesn't have somebody on staff that can handle that. And Sunday morning, something goes wrong. Networking is not everyone's strong suit. So
Mm-hmm.
we
Yeah.
really do choose Dante whenever there is, the one to many application or there's multi-tracking application. And if it's a point to
Yeah.
point, then we usually say, all right, let's stick with S-Link and just make life a little simpler. We just did an install with an SQ7 and SQ5 and broadcast at the church. That's all they want to do. And S-Link made the most sense. And frankly, even in that case, they can use USB to multi-track if they wanted to.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but so yes, we use it, but we are very aware of where we put it.
Mm,
Just for that reason. So.
yeah. Okay. So obviously pointed question. What makes you choose AHM in all your projects that you do? What's making you choose AHM?
Um, Honestly, it's flexibility and what it can do. It's
Mm-hmm.
just and that is the biggest one. Two would be price point. It's a phenomenal price point for what it does, if I'm being honest. And then third would probably be the interface. Like it's easy to use. It's easy to just work around. I love the IP controllers and joining those with it.
Mm-hmm.
And clients do too. IP6s, 8s, and IP1s. We use them everywhere. And clients are like, "Oh, that's all I have to do, and I don't have to touch anything in a big rack with a bunch of knobs and buttons." No, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
So really, it's those three things. But I do love. It seems like so many spaces now, and all the ones we've mentioned, just want zone. We want to hear. We want to hear. We want to hear, and it just makes perfect sense. It will do that job. It'll do it beautifully. It'll do it simply,
Mm-hmm.
at a great price point, and the ability to grow. If they add another zone, you know, go for it. Add it to there, throw an IP controller, some speakers, and rock on. So it's just
Mm-hmm.
we love the product, period. The whole line. So yep.
Yeah. How is supporting it? Because you talked a little bit about Dante and the need to support that at times.
Yep.
So how is it supporting your builds when just it could just be Allen and Heath in general is involved, but yeah, AHM too.
So so
The
whenever
hope
we
is you
set this
never have
up,
to like give any support, right? You just put it in and things work perfectly, and everybody who touches it also knows how to do things perfectly.
yeah, wouldn't that be amazing?
Right.
So on an AHM side, we actually have less we have how do I put this? We have less support issues with the AHM than we do the rest of the line. And
Mm-hmm.
that's honestly because in the AHM, you can really, you set it all up in the background. It's not where
Mm-hmm.
someone can easily touch it, you know,
Yeah, it's pretty like
especially if it's
locked
going,
in unless
it
you
is.
intentionally give them access to it.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we have some AHMs that have been running 24/7 for a year now. And
Mm-hmm.
it was funny. I went to one of those sites recently to look at something completely different and walked in, heard music playing in 3 or 4 different zones. And I was like, we haven't had to touch that in a year. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So, so as far as AHM goes, support, I mean, the biggest thing request we have is, hey, we want to add a zone or add this mic to a zone. And we just go in, drop it in as a cross point, and just there you go. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Even on Allen and Heath consoles in general, though, if we just go outside of that and look at SQ and Q and Venice, when we do an install, we do comprehensive training. I mean, we don't leave until they're
Sure.
comfortable on it because all of us do something at churches on the Sundays. I'm a tech director at my church, and the
Mm-hmm.
other of us run sound or play drums. So we're a little harder to get a hold of. So I'm like, if you call me at 10:45, I will do my best. But
Yeah.
the Allen and Heath whole ecosystem is just so user friendly. And I have multiple clients that will look at it at first and they just deer in the headlights. But after an hour of going over it with them, it's just like this just makes sense. So
Mm-hmm.
are there issues from time to time? And remind me how I mix something in this monitor or remind me how I do pre or post? Yes.
Yeah.
But an overall, when it comes to support, the Allen Heath gear usually isn't what's
Mm-hmm.
we're getting phone calls about.
That's good. That's good. Okay, let's backtrack a little bit more. I want to kind of talk about just project scoping in general. When you first start meeting with a client, what does that process normally look like for you at the beginning? Like somebody, let's say that you hear about a project or they choose your company to say, hey, like we know we want to do this. Do they normally start with here's the end result that we need to hit and you tell us how to get there, or do sometimes they're like we need A, B, and C, can you do that? What does that normally look like for you?
I've had both. I've had both. I honestly prefer the one that walks in and says, "Here's what we want to do. How do we do it?"
Mm-hmm.
And then we basically kind of go through the signal path. And like, we'll start with kind of, but backwards though. Okay, you want some mics?
Mm-hmm.
How many and where?
Yeah.
What are we going to mix it with? And just backtrack from there. The That is usually how it goes. Here's the space. Here's what we want to do. Well, we need these
Mm-hmm.
speakers, these inputs here, there, and then I will sometimes ask harder questions like, do we need to grow to a certain point? Does this need to go somewhere else? Do you see,
Mm-hmm.
because we always like to be looking towards the future. It never fails. More inputs will be added and
Sure.
no more connectivity will be added. More
Yeah, never
flexibility will
build it
be
at
added.
max right now because like
Yes.
it's not gonna. By the time you're literally done deploying it, you're gonna be wish you hadn't.
Yes. Yes. If I am looking at 11 inputs, I'm gonna, be like, well, let's make sure, let's not do an AHM 16. Let's do something and
Mm-hmm.
be ready to add more whenever you want to, because you're probably gonna want
Mm-hmm.
to. The other one where they say we want to do this, you know, um, sometimes I will ask like, why? I will basically ask, what is your end goal? And kind of then
Yeah.
backtrack with them. Because sometimes there's easier ways to go about it. Or there's gear that's in there
Mm-hmm.
that's unnecessary. Or there's gear in there
Oh
that
yeah,
makes
that's
life
got to happen
simpler.
a lot, especially in
Yes.
houses of
And,
worship.
and
It's like unnecessary stuff that nobody's touched for a long
yes.
time.
Yes. And perfect example is some of those churches that are like, we want audio in these rooms. Their mindset is
Mm-hmm.
a mixer and an amp in every room. And
Mm-hmm.
there you go. Perfect. I mean, AHM fits that. Let's find you a
Mm-hmm.
central closet and put an AHM, and life will be great. And you're going to spend a whole lot less
Yeah.
money and a whole lot less clutter in every room. So that's
Mm-hmm.
usually how it goes, is what do you want to do, and work your way backwards.
Yeah. What are the common bumps along the way? And you may have kind of already said it, is when you're going through the house of worship projects, what are the common bumps? Is it because they almost always ask for more zoning, or they didn't realize that they needed more control, or is it just straight up just pulling old cable? Like what's keeping things from going as smoothly as possible?
Oh, well, in a literal, like, logistical sense, pulling cable, yes. If you're in
Right.
old churches, I mean, the site we're at today, we did their PA system, and I had to go through their crawl space, and the block, I kid you all not, the foundation is 36 inches deep. and I had to go outside the church, back up and back in. Yeah, it's built in like 1850, and it's a huge stone. So that's the
It's
first
very
one,
old for us
literally.
here. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, a lot of what we run into is one of the main things we ask with churches a lot is, where do you want this to go? Because yes, there's a ton. Even on your small jobs, it's like, well, this still needs to get to the nursery and the fellowship hall. So even if it's a new
Hmm.
install, they're not talking about a new PA in their sanctuary. Where else does it need to go? And for
Hmm.
cases like that, that is one of those again decision moments where it's like, does that just come off the console as matrix outputs and it's fed to there, or are we doing an AHM where you want control in there? So it's
Hmm.
another little what's best
Yeah.
for this use case scenario. So we have, zone would be a hurdle. Another one would be connectivity on stage is what I run into a lot actually is
Mm, yeah.
I have a lot of more traditional churches that don't want to do drop snakes. So, I want a recessed floor pocket and really deciding where does that connectivity go? How much is
Hmm.
where? Yes, we might put 8 inputs in 3 floor boxes along the back wall, and you only got drums in this corner for now. But what if you ever shifted them to this side or did something?
Right.
So a lot of times when we have discussions on new installs, the connectivity, where it needs to go, how much, and looking towards the future is one of the longest portions of the discussion, because what we
Mm,
want to do is make sure that we're, yes, covering your needs for now, but let's be ready. If we're going to pull it, let's pull it now and be ready to rock and roll.
yeah. How many control points do, like, on average, are houses of worship kind of looking for? Because I know in North America, at least, they've gotten really used to like a lot of production. Even the really small houses of worship, the really small churches. Like, I'm trying to think of the like smallest churches. Like, have I don't even remember the last time I walked into a tiny like country church and there was no sound reinforcement at all. I cannot recall where it's just people talking in a room. Haven't
Yep.
seen that in a very long time. So they're used to this kind of some sense of production, right? And so at what point do they start kind of catching on to, oh, this is a control point I can have, or oh, I like custom control might be an option, or they're used to mixing on a Vantas or SQ, and we've got these apps, so they're kind of start getting used to the glass touching. All these new control points are kind of popping up. How, on average, just how are houses of worship doing with control access?
So every one of them ask for it. uh, I mean, I even have some small churches that are just running simple, like just piano, pulpit mic, pastor's mic, and an organ. And and especially I've seen it with even a smaller team where it's just a couple people that are running things that'll be
Mhm.
like, hey, can we throw that on our Wi-Fi so I can adjust that from the pew if I need to or whatever. So I see a whole lot of even if we do a small Q16 install, making sure that's
Mhm.
on the network because they want that control, or utilizing the SQ
Yeah.
for You app. We had a small church last week that did an SQ5 and decided to do 4 in-ears. And they immediately wanted to use the SQ for You app. Never touched it before in their life, but knew that that was a possibility. And we were
Mhm.
redoing their network anyway. So, I mean, I can't think of hardly any installs now where we're not adding that to the network and enabling either, the QPad Mix app or the SQ or
Mhm.
SQ for You. Um, yeah, it's in almost every one now. I think our
Yeah.
biggest reason it's not is if the church doesn't have. I mean, we do some work in churches that don't have a network. Period. Don't have internet, so it's like, and that
Oh,
one they're not.
oh, say more about that. That's the
Yeah,
odd thing.
I
Is
I
like,
have
oh,
a
so they don't
couple
want any
that
network.
I have a couple that do not have internet at all.
Mm.
So it is at those queues and amps and stuff we're using, they're living off the grid. Yeah, we do have a couple like that. But yeah, besides that, I mean, every church is asking for some kind of control like that. So
Yeah. Do you keep your control network separate from your audio network when you are using networked audio?
in terms of like Dante, obviously, um,
Yeah, like if you're using Dante, are you keeping that on a separate section of the network or separate VLAN than you are the
yes.
control stuff like the IP controllers or the apps or what have you?
Absolutely. Yes.
Mhm.
We prefer actual separate switches if we can, just so it's
Oh, really?
literally, yeah, and that's sometimes is in the case where we're not managing the network. When we're not
Mm, yeah,
managing the network and it's on the same switch, you're like,
for sure.
so we'll separate that
Yeah.
off. If we are managing the network, we'll VLAN, and we
Mhm.
actually by default always do, when we're doing a network from the ground up, we'll do, a guest network. We'll do an admin network,
Hmm.
and the admin network is like staff, copiers, printers, things
Sure.
like that.
Yeah.
But we'll do a separate AV network entirely, and that is where we'll put our SQ. That's where we'll put our amps for
Hmm.
DSP control.
Yeah.
That's where we'll put our IP controllers and things like that. And then we'll do a separate Dante entirely, which in some case means separate NICs on machines, but that just means that we are isolating that, preventing some further problems. But yes, keeping that separate and clean. Um, we're a little OCD, so yeah.
I think the OCD is a good thing to have because some of the networked stuff that I run into, I'm always at a certain point. This is going to turn into me preaching about it, but like the networks stuff is so much fun, but it sometimes feels like people sort of like overshoot it. And we were talking about specking AHMs and picking their like appropriate engine or their appropriate console to like fit the situation.
Yep.
I feel like the opposite thing happens in networking where they're like, oh, well, let's just throw as much stuff onto it as we possibly can. And then they either like struggle to either support it or it's really easy to like bump something and then the whole thing topple over and it feels like a house of cards. So, how do you design your networks? And maybe more importantly, how do you make sure that your clients are comfortable working inside of that network? Because networking can be really scary.
It can. So whenever we do a network from the ground up, one of the first discussions we have is, does the church have someone that is the tech person that handles this?
Mm-hmm.
If the answer is yes, we have a long discussion with them to see, like, are you going to handle this? Or are we going to handle this?
Mm-hmm.
I will say that we've been lucky in terms of the one that we've
Yeah.
handled. We don't have clients really get into it. Honestly, a lot of times that is in our rack in the back.
Right.
It's locked behind a lock and key. Of course, they have access to it, but it's all tidied
Sure.
up,
Sure.
and haven't had much issues there. We have had issues where clients manage those, and we've done in the job. We've told them what ports we want VLANs for whatever, and we'll
Mm-hmm.
get a call that nothing's talking right, and go in there, and sure enough, something else
Mm.
has been plugged into that VLAN and is
Right.
messing
Right.
everything up. So, it's really just a really clear discussion with the client as to what is your responsibility and what is ours, and what are you not going to touch and what are we going to touch. Um,
Yeah.
so, and that is actually one of the main reasons that we've started doing a service contract with a lot of churches where we
Mm.
manage that network off site. We see it. We get a notification when AP goes down or something isn't connected. Or, if they say it's not working, we'll log in and see, well, I see everything, but what is this that's plugged in port 15 that wasn't there
Mm.
before?
Yeah.
We do a lot of that now. We have a lot of churches that is an ease of mind for them that we can manage it, take care of it, don't actually have to step foot on site sometimes.
Yeah.
But in most of the networks we do, there is that clear cut who is doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And if you all are doing it, then it's out of our
Yeah.
hands. So,
Right. Got to define who's responsible for what because when the inevitable happens and something happens, when the
yep.
inevitable happens, who's getting the phone call
Yes,
is really
exactly.
important. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yep.
And you said that you do some support contracts, which I
Yeah.
find just a really interesting development inside of AVIT stuff. Have you utilized the ability for WAN and remote access into the AHM as a part of your support contract, whether you're changing the audio system itself or custom IP controllers,
Yep.
um, anything like that?
I believe we have actually just once, and I think we did it for makers. There was an issue on a Sunday, and so we
Mm.
got in
Oh
and made
man,
an adjustment on the AHM.
yeah.
But beyond that, I haven't had to a whole lot, to be honest.
Okay. Well, I mean, hey, not needing to support it is a good thing.
That's right.
I
Yep.
was just curious.
Yep.
Since you're doing support calls, we do. I mean, we just find people doing some, or like for schools, they need help right away or whatever, and it's
Yep.
hard to wait. But same for houses of worship too. Is like it's literally Sunday morning, and this is it for the week. So if we
Yep.
don't get this, bummer, kind of
Yep.
deal. So
I haven't
yeah.
seen as much. I haven't had to do it with AHM
Mm.
really much. But if I'm being honest, Pro Presenter clicking the wrong thing because obviously
Oh,
we do
Pro
the video
Presenter.
side of it as well. Yeah. So let me take over your
Yeah.
screen. Let me fix your screen config real quick, and then you're good to go. That happens all
Yeah.
the time.
Pro Presenter used to be really finicky if the screens booted up in a weird order. Is that still a thing that we know of? Like I haven't gone into Pro Presenter in a long time, but
If you are using like a Decklink card, like a Blackmagic Decklink card
Mm-hmm.
in a Sonnet enclosure, not so much. They stay there.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're still using USB-C to HDMI or your HDMI right out of the back, it's still a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not supposed to be a thing. It's
Got
still a
it.
thing.
It happens.
Yep.
Things happen. It's
Yep.
okay.
I saw it. I saw it last
Yeah.
week. So,
Yeah. Very cool. Well, okay, so you've done Maker's Mark. You say now you're doing Jim Beam, right? So when's that happening so I can book the flight for
ah,
research
well,
purposes, obviously, but you know.
right now it's conferencing systems, so it's nothing too crazy.
Hey, we like
But
conferencing.
yeah. But there is some stuff on the horizon that's coming,
Yeah.
hopefully. And some new projects at Makers that's coming too. So
Yeah, yeah.
I
Very
can't say
cool. Yeah,
much.
well, you were
Sorry.
saying, oh, and that's okay. Yeah, no, don't reveal anything you're not supposed to say. But yeah, it's just been so fun watching and getting to visit the Maker's Mark Distillery. Felt really special because it was such a beautiful place. But then seeing how you're connecting multiple engines, and especially now doing the priority inputs, just the pages like, hey, weather emergency. I wanted to ask, will those will be live or canned? System-wide
They
announcements.
wanted actually they won both. So they actually
Mm,
wanted to store some stored messages that would be
mm,
in the AHM's library,
hmm.
and RTI would trigger certain ones based on simple button presses. But then they did
Yeah.
want the ability to grab a mic and push the button and talk, and it duck everything. So both.
Mm, nice. Very cool. Okay. Well, sounds like you're doing a lot still. You continue to be insanely busy, right? Any
Yep.
fun projects coming up that you are allowed to talk about?
Oh, um, well, there's possible work at another distillery, but I'm not going to say who yet.
A
Um,
third distillery? Like
yes,
you're just the
yes.
distillery guy
So,
now.
I mean, we are in bourbon country. We're surrounded. So there's a distillery a mile and a half from my house. So, let's see. I'm trying to think. Got some school projects this summer that are doing some AHM
Oh yeah,
stuff.
summer's coming up. Yeah, yeah. I keep forgetting. Summer's a huge. It's everybody get it done in education. So
Yep. Yep. That is the no kids are here. Go in the gym and do what you got to do.
quick.
Uh, so we've got a third school project that's going to be like SQ6. Some cool stuff there. I'm trying to think if there's anything.
I mean, that's already so many different kinds of work.
Oh, I do
So,
have one. We just did a small theater
ooh,
and we did an Aventus
ooh,
solo,
ooh.
and they're using an IP1 for control for some Danley Nanos back in their costume area where they change.
Oh,
So they can
nice
hear
for
what's
them to be
going
able to hear
on.
the show.
Uh-huh.
Nice.
Yeah. And they have 20 sure QLXDs that are all networked to the Avantis. So when you bring it up, you can see all the RF, all the battery. That is
Oh,
the
oh
coolest
yeah,
thing ever.
love that.
I mean, it is
I
just
know
everything is
it's
buried back in the back, and I can see everything right there.
yeah.
And there's possible they're going to add an IP8 for a small fader wing. Their front of house is literally just, I mean, like 7 feet, and they're trying to run
Mm,
lights, sound, and video from there. So the solo was the option in terms of real estate for that, but obviously I
hmm.
still have her DSP and everything in there. So it's very
Hmm.
possible they're going to add an IP8, and then we're going back to finish. So we did part of that. We did the rack install, the wireless install, the console install a couple weeks ago, and we're going back in 2 weeks to install the new PA and put in the IP1 and
Nice.
do that fun stuff. So that was a cool one.
Sweet. Yeah, I think what's nice, and a lot people who are in the Allen and Heath ecosystem would agree, the ecosystem itself is what helps make the brand so powerful. It makes projects so much easier, is because whether you're specing a solo or you're going and putting 3 or 4 AHMs or some IP controllers or adding the IO, what have you, it all just sort of you don't have to worry about it. You're not like siloing yourself into one section or
Yep.
the other. You can just build the system
Yes.
as it's appropriate for the job.
Yep. Yeah, there literally is a product that fits all those markets. And what's
Yeah.
great is they use the same IO expanders. They all talk
Mm-hmm.
together. I've got personal
Mm-hmm.
monitoring taken care of. Yeah. I mean, we have a couple more new builds that, in the sanctuary is an Avantis, and in back in the rack is a AHM for the rest of the building, and in the kids area is an
Mm-hmm.
SQ5. I mean, and on stage is ME1s. So yeah, having that to fit those is absolutely one of the. I mean, we love the product anyway, but having that and can stay in the same ecosystem and it all talks,
Mm-hmm.
and clients love it and it sounds great and it works great. That is absolutely one of the biggest things.
Mm. Okay. All right. Well, this has been a superb conversation. Thank you for taking time out of your morning to just come and chat with me about all the projects. You guys are doing such great work. I've told you this before, but you're just one of the people that calls and I pick up. Like I answer back. There's no problem. You've got great ideas. You're working on something cool. Like, and you're just such a nice guy. Like you're a good hang.
Thank
So
you. Thank you.
thank you very much. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Everybody, be sure to check out. We have Maker's Mark press release. We also have the House of Worship that you did the children's wing on. We have press releases on that and case studies. You might start seeing Alex's name just like everywhere now that you've been on video. It's like I remember that guy from that thing that we did. Yeah.
He
So
does everything from
again,
funeral homes to distilleries.
yeah, yeah. Funeral homes and bowling alleys, JCA
That's
Media.
right.
So, all right. Well, thanks again, everybody. Thanks for coming in and hanging out during the Integrator Insider. Remember, we've got two more coming up over the next couple of months leading up to InfoComm. And at InfoComm, I'm doing 3 different classes, one on networking, some on AHM certifications. We're going to have a lot going on, a great booth. So be sure to come check us out in Las Vegas in June. So until next time, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next month. Have a good one.
Thank you.